Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, a political earthquake in the streets of Bangladesh. After weeks of deadly protests and crackdowns, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and fled the country. I'm Kevin Hirten, and this is The Take.
The Honorable Prime Minister has resigned from her post.
This was Army Chief General Waqar-uz-Zaman on Monday in an address to the nation.
We will form an interim government for now to run the country.
Bangladesh now faces a very uncertain future. But how did we get here?
People are saying it is our second independence since we got independent from the Pakistan in 1971. They are saying that 5th of August would become our second Independence Day in the history of Bangladesh. I'm Zulkarnain Saer. I'm an investigative journalist and researcher contracted with Al Jazeera's Investigative unit.
Saer, you and I have worked together for years. We've known each other for years. You were a whistleblower.
Yeah.
You worked as an investigative journalist, a vocal critic of Sheikh Hasina and the ruling Awami League. I know that you and your family have been threatened by this government and its supporters. So what was your first thought when you first saw that she stepped down?
My first thought was, of course, it was a massive relief seeing her leave the country. Bangladesh had enough of Sheikh Hasina and her notorious activities, in a sense that the entire country has been ruled in a way that it was operated by a cult, not by a political party. So Sheikh Hasina's party, the Aya Elmileik, built a cultish culture in the political scene of Bangladesh. So when I saw the helicopter was taking her away to the airport, and from the airport she departed for another location, first of all, I just couldn't believe that. Is it happening so fast? And then I was like, okay, it is really happening, and it is happening, and I can see it in front of my eyes.
It sounds like relief in your voice, and it seems like relief in the images that we're seeing from the capital, Dhaka, thousands of people in the street. Can you tell us some of the things that you've seen on your screens, the things you've been seeing on social media?
Oh, yeah. I have seen people have taken the Parliament House of Bangladesh. Jubilant people went inside the Parliament House. They're taking photos. They're dancing on the tables. It is unbelievable. I have seen people entering Sheikh Hasina's residence, which is called the Kono Bhavan. So people went inside. I've seen people laying down on her bed. They are taking stuff from there. She had a huge garden, so people are taking vegetables. They're taking her chickens, ducks. Some are trying to catch fish. Some people found some clothes inside the house. The guards, Sheikh Hasina's personal security guards from the special security force, people saw them sitting next to the roads, and they don't know what to do. They were asked, "What are you doing?" They said, "We don't know what is our next action. What should we do?" Because earlier our job was to protect the Prime Minister, but now we are kind of clueless.
Wow. Okay, well, let's talk about how we got here. In early July, protests erupted against a controversial high court ruling that passed in June. So it reestablished a quota system reserving many government jobs for the children of the men and women who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971. It unleashes this wave of protest. Why did this somewhat obscure ruling in the high court garner this type of reaction?
The protest basically started with the quota reform system that has been there since 1972, where 30% of jobs were reserved for the family members of the freedom fighters.
Tens of thousands of students and their supporters have gathered in the capital, Dhaka.
The unrest started after the government reintroduced limits on who has access to highly sought-after government jobs.
just for people who don't know, saving jobs for the children of freedom fighters sounds fine if you don't know the context, but really that's a euphemism for giving jobs to friends of the government because it's so closely aligned to the independence struggle. Is that right?
That is correct. And also people who fought in the War of Independence, most of their kids have matured already. And now it was going to their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. And people didn't really take it easily, because it's a country where the population is 170 and getting a government job is very competitive. And people are demanding it to be based on merit, not by default that you are a privileged person because your grandfather or great-grandfather was a freedom fighter, which I feel is a very legitimate ask. Like, why I should be entitled for something that my great-grandfather did. I have never seen my great-grandfather. Right, so why I should be benefited that way when there is somebody with a correct set of merit is getting deprived of the ideal job. So all this created a kind of tension in the society, dissatisfaction amongst the young people, and they took the streets. And then we have seen how the police went in the field. In the first day, there were a number of casualties. Second day, it escalated. And in 3 to 4 days' time, nearly 300 people died. We have an account of 300 people losing their lives. That includes policemen, that includes general students, includes children. Why would a government deploy snipers to neutralize a protest by general students? Who does that? These general students were just kids, 20, 25 years old, and they were being shot at by 7.62 millimeter guns. I don't think I have seen anything like this. And the shots, if you see, are very gruesome because the bullet size is quite big. It has blown people's head up. It has opened up people's body. It's just so brutal, so brutal.
Okay, so back to the timeline, right? On July 15th, the demos turned violent. On July 18th, the government imposes this curfew. Then on July 21st, the court backs down. It scales back the jobs quota to 5%, but the protests don't stop. So why didn't they stop?
They didn't stop because the government killed a significant number of people by that time. They have killed 300 people. They've injured nearly 3,000 people. And then the students approached the government with certain demands. The students asked the Prime Minister to ask forgiveness for all this and to take responsibility. But none of their demands were fulfilled. And the government kept on demanding that you guys go back to your normal life and we will see.
After the break, what's next for Bangladesh after this surprise announcement? Okay, Saer, Sheikh Hasina comes from an incredibly well-known family.
As the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman considered the country's founding father, her history was closely intertwined with that of her homeland.
She's a 4-time prime minister dating back to the 1990s. But as time went on, her critics say she became more and more authoritarian. We've seen how she's cracked down on dissidents this past month, certainly. And I know you've reported extensively on extrajudicial killings in past years. So one minute she has this firm grip on power, the next she's gone. So what do you think finally pushed her over the edge to make this decision?
To come to this decision that she had to take today, it was not very easy. It was not very easy in the sense that Sheikh Hasina is a very hard-headed person. Like, she is very adamant. She doesn't really bow down to any kind of requests, or she is not the kind of person who would acknowledge her mistakes. But military plays a significant role in deciding the power in Bangladesh or in the Southeast Asia. So what happened was, here, people's agitation have grown, and even in the military, they have noticed that this is what is happening, is not right, killing our own people is not right, and military officers had massive anger amongst them as well. They were not really supporting how the government was conducting these killings of students.
More than 90 people were killed in the latest wave of anti-government unrest on Sunday, the deadliest day since the outbreak of violence and protests in the country last month.
So the Chief of Army Staff called for a meeting with all the military officers, where the officers expressed that they are very annoyed. Even the general troops, the soldiers, were very annoyed with the government's this kind of behavior, which suggests that Sheikh Hasina lost her support in the armed forces. And when you lose your support in the armed forces, that means you have to go, because we have history of a very bloody coup d'etat in the past. So keeping a head of government who is not supported by the general troops would ultimately lead us to something brutal, something bloody. So that's why I think the authorities have been persuading Sheikh Hasina to step down, but seeing that the pressure is mounting, she has nowhere to leave, she has nowhere to escape, she had to step back and she had to resign.
For people who do not know, the military is incredibly important as an institution in Bangladesh. So when you've lost support of the military, you really can't rule the country. So the military's come in saying they're going to form an interim government. Where do you see things going from here?
I think very soon we'll see Bangladesh have formed a neutral caretaker government with some known civil society individuals like retired professors, retired military officer, retired bureaucrats. We have seen this kind of practice in the past. And given the present scenario where the country's economy is in a very fragile state, and also civil administration, public administration, and in the security services, in all those services, we have the Aya Elmileik people everywhere. So during Sheikh Hasina's regime for 15 years, the Aya Elmileik people received benefits in a manner that everyone else was deprived. So now it will take some good time for the interim government to organize all these things and to prepare for a free and fair election. So I think we are looking at least 1 year of an interim government in Bangladesh who can manage things maybe a bit more. But I really hope that whoever comes forward to contest in the election would reconsider the mistakes of Sheikh Hasina and would not repeat the same.
This all started because of the ruling about the quota system, and then we've seen more demands. But isn't the core demand at the root of all of this is just democracy, and that people just want free and fair elections? They want a real decision about who rules them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the last election in 2023, there were no participation from other political parties, and it was just a very one-sided thing. Over the years, people have been denied their voting rights. There were no democracy, there were no freedom of speech. So people want their voice to be heard. People want accountability in the system and rule of law. So, the people now expect whoever will form the government, whoever will come in the future, will ensure their voting rights, press freedom, transparency, accountability everywhere, and a massive check on corruption.
So all of those things you talked about, freedom of press, free elections, the rule of law, they've been foreclosed for so long. I mean, you yourself have not been able to return to Bangladesh. You've been in exile. And now they could all come back. You could go back to your homeland. I mean, how are you processing that?
It's a lot to process. But again, as a journalist, we have to report on both the sides. So I don't know. Whoever is coming in power, we'll have to see how they're performing. Otherwise, they will also not like me. And then again, probably I will have to leave the country and start living in exile again. Because in Bangladesh, political parties do not want to be held accountable for their misdeeds. They do not accept their mistakes. But this is the thing that in the future days, I think they should really learn how to accept mistakes, how to seek apology, and how to check corruption, and how to ensure people's rights, people's freedom.
Okay, Saer, we'll leave it there. I know you're going to be busy all night responding to texts and calls and checking in with sources. And this is clearly, we're living history right now. So thank you for joining The Take.
No worries, Kevin. Thank you so much.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Khaled Soltan and Chloe K. Lee, with Duha Mossad, Veronique Eshaya, and me, Kevin Hirten, in for Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.